Greetings, everyone. Welcome to the NANOG community meeting. On behalf of our chair, Philip Smith, who's unable to be here, I am playing the substitute role. My name is Jared Mach. So I want to try and get through this quick because I'm starting to think about food again. So hopefully you're all on the same page. We've got a quick agenda here. I'm going to give a steering committee report. Todd Underwood here is going to give a report from the program committee. I'm going to go and try and provide a basic mailing list committee report. Betty's going to give us a merit update on what's going on there. And Steve Feldman is going to give us an update on some of the charter changes and things that we've been thinking about already for the fall meeting, where we have an opportunity to go through elections. By nature of registering for NANOG, even if you don't come, for 2 years you can vote for people who you think should be in charge of NANOG. So you can go ahead and do that and vote us bums out if you don't like us, which should be popular. But you also get the opportunity to vote on how you believe the community should be going, any charter changes that are up, as well as there's an opportunity for the community to come with their own set of charter changes as well. So to give you a brief little thing, I'm on the steering committee. We also have Betty Burke here, who's sitting in for, who's the merit representative for it. Randy Bush is not able to be here this meeting. Steve Feldman is sitting here on the end. I am Jared. I see Chris Morrow back there talking. Hi, Chris. We have, yeah, I'm going down the list. I have the laptop sitting here. Joe Provo. Philip Smith is not here, but we have Todd. And Todd, we believe, looks a lot like Moby. So here's our quick highlight since last time, if you were there with us in San Jose. We've been doing, lots of preparations. Betty's done some work on, just a little bit on preparing for NANOGs. We're also trying to look out in the future and come up with the, try and plan out the meetings as far out. And the 18 months out is actually how far we would really love to be. We go and we hold conference calls every 2 weeks, whether or not we like it or not. It generally is rather fun. And we go and publish the minutes of those conference calls on a website. So if you're interested, you can go and read about whatever it is we talked about. Betty's come, our other highlights, Betty's come back. She had she had a bit of an accident and a run-in, and she's looking just about as good as she was when she left. We're very thankful for Merit for providing Andy and other people to step in, especially for San Jose NANOG, as well as for all the other fill-in activities that need to be done while Betty was out. We've gone ahead and we've done some infrastructure migration. You've probably started to see some of the fallout of this. The mailing list, for example, got migrated, which is a big thing. There's some work being done on the new NANOG website, which is going to be launched here soon, I think, as well as we've dealt with some administrative issues. One of the members of the program committee, Ted Seeley, who we wish to make sure that we thank for all of his hard work, he resigned, and we appointed Brian Deerdorf to fill that role. Yay. Hi, Brian. And we've also been dealing with what's become a bit of a recurring question over the past couple years of what to do with the media here at NANOG. There's been a number of requests, especially when we were in San Jose, for members of the press to come and attend the conference. And we haven't exactly figured out what would be the appropriate role. And we're definitely interested in hearing any input from you, but we're working on a proposal for that internally, which we expect to circulate at some point. If you think that they should be banned or they should have to pay for all the food they consume or something, you should definitely pay attention to it, because it's relevant for how your registration dollars are spent. Some of the additional highlights here. we've been continuing to look at the acceptable use policy enforcement process, getting some of the processes for the mailing list committee documented, talking to them. And as I believe everyone is aware, we dissolved the mailing list committee unanimously, as well as went ahead and appointed a new mailing list committee. Just a little while ago. We also have a number of interesting questions that have come up, especially regarding being here in New York, and this has come up in other places as well. We're really, really interested in you filling out the survey this time because we're trying to figure out if a day pass model would be helpful for you in attending these meetings. If it's possible for you to just say, I'm going to come and attend on a Tuesday or on a Monday or whatever. We're really, really interested in hearing the results from that because whenever you're talking about changing any sort of the financials of the conference, it's definitely the case that we're very concerned, and we want to be able to adapt to your needs and not have the registration fees be really high, but at the same point we need to make sure that Merit isn't stuck holding the bag for a lot of money, which is really, really important. So please start harping on this now. Please fill out the survey, and either in paper form or online, preferably, because that definitely helps out when it's done online. And you can put all your comments in there. I don't believe the IP addresses are logged back, so we're not going to hunt you down and figure out that it was me who said I hate the steering committee. So, excellent. So we, as I mentioned, we established the new mailing list committee. Apparently I can't cut and paste correctly. It says steering committee members. I didn't fix that. The mailing list committee members, I believe, have pink little overlays on their badges. The current team is Simon Lau, Chris Foster, David Barrick, Tim Yoakum, and Sue Joyner is the Merit representative, the Merit designated representative.
Thank you.
Yep. Thank you for volunteering to serve the community. I'm sure it will be painful.
Jared, do you want to say what the mailing list committee does?
The mailing list, oh, okay, sure.
It can bring a lot of joy too, Jared.
It can,
The day when you discover that your term is expired.
excellent. Yeah, I remember when my previous term on the steering committee expired and enjoying the remainder of those days in the meetings for NANOG for a little bit. But yes, the mailing list committee is responsible for ensuring that the mailing list operates without any difficulties dealing with the requirements spelled out in the charter for the AUP enforcement, et cetera. Do you want me to say more than that, Todd? Excellent. Here's a bunch of the mailing lists. There's a lot. Considering what we are in some cases. You can certainly send messages to the steering committee anytime you want. We would be happy to get something other than spam, because we seem to get a fair amount of that. You can also contact the program committee and, of course, the mailing list committee. There's also the futures list, which if you're sitting in here, hopefully you're subscribed to, which is where the conversations in this room go after we're done here today. And generally, some of it spills over onto the regular mailing list, but we'd certainly like to corral all the non-operational things onto the futures list. And we're interested in hearing whatever your feedback is on what we're doing right and what we're doing wrong. I'm trying to be efficient, so are there any questions? Well, if not, then we would like to have the program committee report. Todd?
Hello. That was. No, as those of you who saw the video from the Global Peering Forum know, I don't sing that well. So welcome. So far, I'm really disappointed at the lack of conflict and turmoil here. The lack of Sturm und Drang, right? So we need, I don't know if we need tequila shots to spur things on, but. Oh, can you do that? Lovely.
Just say next slide.
Next slide, please. Good. That's nice. Just leave it there. So let me do some brief introduction. So I'll be your host for the next 4 slides. My name's Todd Underwood. And I am part of a very large group of people who put together this program for you. So when you're grumbling outside of the plenary saying, this stuff is all crap, who picked this? That would be us, see? So, and if you're looking in particular, so sometimes there's free-form grumbling, and I respect and like that. I think free-form grumbling is cool. Occasionally, you would like to focus your grumbling on somebody to be the receptacle of that grumbling, and that would be those of us with the yellow badge. So if you have thoughts about what you wish the program had been, were it not to have been the program that it actually is, and more importantly, if you had an idea of what was the talk that had we only put it on, you would have thought the whole program was great, that would be to find someone with the yellow badge. So let me do quick introductions for people who are on the program committee who are in the audience. So Larry Blanc is here. Oh, there, stand up. As I call, you have to stand up and stay standing up. Stay standing up. Larry Blanc is right over there. Brian Deerdorf, our newest, and he doesn't know how sorry he is yet. Member of the program committee is over here. Nick Feemster, I think, is not here. Igor Gashinsky, there, good. Kobe, right there. Yep. Mike Hughes, stand up, stop typing, good. Rodney's already standing in the back. Sylvie will be here, I think, on Monday evening or Tuesday. Did I skip Joel? Joel, where's Joel? Joel, stand up. Hey, you stop typing too, goodness. Keith, just don't sit down. Keith Mitchell over there, stand up. Kevin Oberman in the back. Lane is not here. Is he here? Ren, Provo. Josh Snowhorn was around but isn't here now. Richard Steenbergen never comes to these meetings as far as I can tell. I'm Todd Underwood, and Bill Woodcock will not be here, I believe. So these are your program committee, and we have sorted through, I will tell you just how many in a few minutes, but it seemed like endless selections of program submissions, and we picked them. So you guys can sit down now. Good. Next slide, please. I'm going to go over briefly the timeline. There was some kvetching about the timeline. It's New York, so I can say kvetching, and people know what that means, which is so great. I did actually say kvetching to someone recently, and he said, I don't know what that means. He really did, just looked at it, was great. So for this NANOG, what we have been trying to do is get the program out early. We're trying to do that because we know that some of you work for large inflexible corporations and you need to justify your travel some number of weeks in advance, some number of months in advance. And we believe that having a program to append to your travel request would help you with that process. And the evidence that we've had is that the earlier we get out the program, the better the attendance is. I don't know if that will continue to be the case, but that's the evidence we've been given, so that's what we're trying to do. So the call for proposals was released 1 March 2008, so a couple weeks after the last NANOG, or not a week and a half, I guess, after the last NANOG ended. The first submission deadline was the 8th of March. So that gave people a full 7 days to figure out what they wanted to talk about, come up with a draft of it, and submit it to us. And a bunch of people did, which was pretty great. The fake draft agenda was posted on the 1st of April. That was not posted by me. I just want to say I would love to take credit for that, and people have been giving me credit for that, but I did not write it. I wish I had. So the key items on the fake draft agenda included a keynote by Randy Bush saying we tried that 20 years ago. It didn't work then. That was a good keynote that we were going to have. VJ Gill on the 100 gig networking panel. It does not scale. Anyone who knows VJ Gill. Has everyone seen the Google commercial that VJ's in? It's this whole Google commercial that mimics the Mac commercials with VJ talking about scaling. And it's just, if you know him and you've ever seen him saying, that won't scale, it's perfect. Anyway, it's really great. And it had the Tony Capella. Anybody who's ever seen a lightning talk by Tony, Tony does the wireless networking for NANOG. And what Tony is one of these like really smart, hyper ADD guys who can't get a presentation done before 3 minutes before the NANOG starts, right? So it's impossible for him to get a presentation accepted in the regular plenary, which we would gladly do because all his presentations are full of juicy nuggets of real operational detail and good analysis, but he can't do that. So he submits these lightning talks that are like 32 slides of screen captures and configuration, and it's dense stuff, and he gives it in like 7.3 minutes. It's like, boom, and then you spend the next like 6 hours trying to unpack your recollection of what it was he just said. So he was going to give the 5-minute load balancing, wavelength division multiplexing with forward error correction, keying, kilobyte volumes of service in metro networks. But then next slide. So in the real timeline, we posted a draft agenda on 9 April, which was almost 2 months before the conference. I think that's the earliest or one of the earliest that we've posted an agenda. We've had mostly positive feedback in private about the program. The 2 kvetches I've heard were, one serious kvetch was no IPv6 content. We didn't get any IPv6. Oh, that's right. Well, Marty always kvetches in public. That's okay. We didn't get any IPv6 submissions of any sort, and I don't know if that's because everybody's already adopted IPv6 and decided it's a good protocol. No. I'm looking seriously at Apple Talk for my next generation, as long as we're going with a non-internet protocol. But it seems like a lot of people are interested in IPv6. In Albuquerque, for those of you who were there, we were drowning in v6 content, and the feedback was really split. Half the people said, the only reason I came was for all this v6 stuff. I'm so glad you had it. And the other half of people I talked to were like, would you just give it a rest? So maybe we struck the wrong part of the balance. Mr. Yegley.
Yeah.
Say your name and your favorite
Joel Yegley.
Care Bear, please.
I work for Nokia. But my favorite color is green. No, blue. Yeah, so, I mean, I think there is actually some v6 content in the program. It's just that it's somewhat under the radar. And some of it obviously is from registries who obviously are interested in giving out numbers. Yep. And they will have one less kind of number to give out shortly. So they have some priorities there. But notwithstanding that, I mean, I think it's really good to have the program vary from meeting to meeting, because I think we attract slightly different crowds when we do that. And I don't think that we can address the needs of everyone in the community all the time. So, I would hope that, one, we're diligent in keeping IPv6 in the front of people's minds, but also that we, vary the content a little bit, because if I came to NANOG and I saw the same thing every time I came here, I'd have less reason to come. Thanks.
Good. Yep. So my real point about this, and I'd be happy to have a more detailed discussion about the program with individuals or small groups of people later, that we really want your feedback. That, the program committee is, you guys saw, it's very large. It's very large not because each of us who's on it dreamed of being on a committee with 16 people who held regular teleconferences, because that's not really all that smart. Not that we're smart, but we're smart enough to know that a huge committee is unwieldy. But we have a big committee because we want lots of perspectives, and we want a lot of outreach to people from big companies, and people from large service providers, and people from research and education, and people who work for vendors, and people who work for equipment manufacturers. And so that's why we have a big committee. If you think interesting stuff that is going on isn't showing up at NANOG that you think is appropriate for this audience because you want to see it, then we definitely want to hear that. If we hear it from one loonball in the hallway, we probably won't necessarily put it on the next program. But if we hear it from 5 people, we're definitely, because we don't get that much feedback. So however much feedback you guys can give us, definitely. Is the one? Oh, one. Yes, sir.
Hey, Todd, just a general question. My name is Bill Norton. I have no affiliation.
Favorite Care Bear? Oh, no, sorry. Go ahead.
Is 16, 17 the right number of people to have on a program committee?
A lot has been, certainly the charter is open to revisions. My perspective right now is I should have said something about this, but we evolved the structure of the program committee almost a year ago now to have, I'm chairing it, and Ren Provo, stand up again, is vice chairing it. And that has, you're not standing up. She's not going to stand up. But that has made a huge difference, because I think, Steve Feldman was chair of the program committee for a number of years. Yes, at least 2 years. That's a number. Oh, no. Well, I guess 1 is a number. 3 years, 6 years.
Felt like 6,
It was so 4 years, and what really happened was there was a large committee and they had some impact, but it really amounted to Steve having to do the bulk of the organizational work, and that work wasn't ultimately all that transparent because he was just sort of trying to get it all done. And what we've done is we've developed some tools for coordinating our efforts, tools for voting on presentations, and tools for tracking presentation submissions, and we're trying to make those better. But also spreading the work a little bit between Ren and I has meant that we're a lot more accessible, and it's a lot less strain on any one of us. I think having a big committee, I don't think it should be bigger than 16, but I think having a big committee is important because NANOG is really broad. Like if you didn't have anyone from a large network operator on the program committee, that'd be weird, right? But what if you didn't have anyone who worked at a content network? That might be a little bit weird. What if you had no one from research or educational networks, or no one actively doing any research? What if you didn't have any vendors or any, ultimately there's a lot of different constituencies here. And what we have in common is that we're interested in serious research and engineering and operational issues about large-scale networking. That's what we share in common. And so I think it'd be tough to have a program committee much smaller than 8 or 10, and I think 16 is pretty good. So, good. Let me move on. That's not moving on. Oh my God. Sweet mother of Jesus. Yeah. Quick submissions. People often ask us, like, well, how many talks were submitted? And, so 36 talks were submitted, 24 of them were accepted. For most conferences, that would mean that we just got crap and we took the best of it. For NANOG, what that means is that, historically it was the case that we would reject 1 or 2 or 3 talks. And I should say, of the 12 that we didn't accept, most of them were sort of withdrawn for reasons that the submitter couldn't actually do it after they were submitted, or we're trying to work with it to improve the content for a future NANOG. So to my mind, for this crew, this is pretty good. This means that we got a bunch of talks. Most of them were really, really good. And we have some to work on improving for the next time. So what it should mean to you as an attendee, as a member of the community, is if you think you have something interesting, find someone on the program committee and bounce some ideas off of them, because it's not that hard to get something solid accepted at NANOG. And one other thing I'll tell you is that the hardest talks to get accepted at NANOG are those talks that are produced by marketing departments of large companies. Like, some of them can get in, but they have a very high bar. It's got to have real engineering detail. It can't just push one particular product. It's got to be useful. Like we look at those very carefully. Whereas if you're a Joe network operator who solved an interesting problem, had an interesting experience, have a case that you want to talk about, implemented some technology, compared 2 technologies and found that one of them worked better for your circumstance than the other, any of those will walk right through the submissions process, and you'll be standing on a stage in front of 500 people who will love you. I don't know if they'll love you. It depends on your delivery. They'll probably cheer, though. That'd be nice. So there was some confusion in the submissions process about submission dates, so we had quite a few people submit stuff quite late. When we give that first submission deadline, that's your best shot to getting something accepted. After that, we're going to fill the slots as quickly as we can, and if we don't have any more slots, and that is actually what happened with a few good talks, is that they just came in so late that we just didn't have a good slot to put them in, and so we'll try to recruit those for the next NANOG. So I think that's all. Is that all I have? Yes, ma'am. Yeah, we do have 2 talks accepted, I think, for LA. So we're going to have, LA is the next NANOG, as some of you know, jointly with Aaron in October. And we've already got 2 talks accepted, and we're going to have a fairly aggressive submissions deadline for that. So if you are thinking about something that you'd like to present in October in LA, while you're here is a great time to find someone on the program committee to bounce that idea off, get some feedback. It is not difficult to get, an abstract, and your submission slides can be fairly rough as long as we can tell that you have serious content there. We will conditionally accept even someone who submits 12 or 15 slides where we can tell where you're going and assign someone to work with you to finish it. So, yes, Mr. Norton.
I guess I had a 2-part question. I'm wondering, first of all, just in general, are talks more difficult to recruit now than maybe it has been in the past?
I don't know. I actually think it is so difficult to answer that because I think the program committee as a whole over the last 2 years has gotten much better and more coordinated and more aggressive about recruiting talks. So it used to be true that the program committee's primary job was voting on talks. And I think over the last couple years, we've really made it the job of the program committee to go get talks. So I think if you look around and you talk to people on the program committee, almost every single one of them has tried to recruit 1 or more talks. And many of them have successfully recruited 2 or 3. So that makes it difficult to say because now instead of just sitting back and hoping somebody submits something, we'll go out and recruit them.
Did anyone recruit the same person?
We actually had, this was the first time in my recollection that we had a recruiting collision where 2 program committee members tried to recruit the same person for variants of a similar talk. And I think that's success. I mean, that means we're doing our jobs and we're going out and getting people to try to, give interesting presentations. And yes, part number 2. I'm not like President Bush. I do accept follow-up questions. There's other ways I'm not like President Bush.
You kind of got towards my second question, which has to do about the recruiting activities. One of the things I've noticed through the years is if you look at a lot of the agendas, it's a little disconcerting to see how many pieces of the agenda are filled by members of the program committee themselves. Now, that may actually be an acceptable thing because a lot of folks who get on the program committee are there because they're very knowledgeable and they're willing to contribute and volunteer and such. But if you take the remaining folks who are not on the program committee or steering committee or associated with that core group, I'm wondering, are there names you can specifically identify in the program committee that were responsible for pulling these people in, or is it more that these were submitted talks that just came in?
No, almost all.
I mean,
I think that was your second part was another 2-parter. So that's 3 parts if I'm doing the math right. So part number 2A, I actually think that the percentage of talks given by members of the program committee is at an all-time historical low, and I'm happy about that. I mean, there's some really smart people on the program committee, and they prepare good talks, but I think it used to be the case that there's a program to fill, and we didn't get enough stuff, and so people, metaphorically sit there on a conference call looking at each other until somebody guilts someone into filling a slot. That's not happening so much anymore because we're sitting on good content, and so we don't have to do that. So now when program committee members submit something, we judge it. We're like, sometimes it's pretty good, sometimes it's not, sometimes we need it, sometimes we don't. So, and part number 2B, yeah, if you look at the talks that are from people who are not program committee, which I think is the vast majority, more than half of them were not just walk-in off the street submissions. We went out and got them. And to that point, specifically, if you have some talk that you would like to help us recruit, like I know a guy who, not drug deal, but I know a guy who knows a lot about X, and I think he'd give a great presentation on that, then we'll say, fantastic. Introduce that person to one of us, and we'll go talk to them. We'll harass them. We'll try to get some draft slides. We might not get a presentation out of it. Some of the suggestions we got a really good suggestion from someone that was just too late for this, so we'll try to recruit it for LA. But yes, sir, Mr. Yegley. This is like the Bill and
Joel Yegley.
Joel show.
Yeah, it's the Bill and Joel show. I think one of the challenges that has come from the way the program committee works now in terms of recruiting talks is simply that we have a fairly hard deadline we're working against. And so that has made us more activist, which may, I think lead to a different set of content than we might otherwise have gotten or than we used to. It used to be that, in my experience, there I've only been on the program committee for, 3 years now, 2.5. But it used to be the case that in ancient history, we'd be still scrambling to put pieces into the program, fairly close to the program deadline. And, having hard deadlines earlier means late acceptance, obviously, is much harder because we filled all the slots. But it also means we're chasing that stuff much earlier. And sort of, I guess, to respond to 2A, I ended up running a BOF this time because the person who originally volunteered to do it is not attending. But certainly the other content in there is not from the PC. So, I think that PC members are sort of natural people to shoe in when you need to shore up something because of conflicts or attendance, but certainly they shouldn't be dominating the program, and I think we've been successful at avoiding that.
Yeah, but and that's a really good point. On a governance point, though, frankly, anybody who sits at a microphone in front of a room is probably lying, including me. So let's assume that, including this statement, which is confusing, but let's assume that I'm lying and that we are dominating the program on purpose and I'm just trying to fool you. Well, you should go figure that out, and if you don't like it, you should tell the steering committee to swap out the program committee because we're jerks. NANOG got a certain amount of democracy added to it because people wanted more control over how the mailing list was run and how the programs run. So you guys have that control. If the steering committee doesn't listen to you, vote them out because they're chumps and replace them with people who do what you say. So I don't know. That's how it works.
Yeah.
Right?
So aside from voting us out, which please vote me out next time. No, oh man, I have another year. Okay, so as somebody who's presented at NANOG before, it's probably the easiest 500 people to get up in front of, because you get up there, 3/4 of the people are looking at their laptop screen and they're only vaguely listening to you, like Joel right now. And so it's easy, you just get up there, it's in a semi-dark room because everyone wants the light down so it doesn't glare off the screen. And then when you're done, everyone claps and you sort of walk off, and those people who actually were listening will come and talk to you. And everyone else just ignores the fact that you were ever up there. And it works really well that way, because that way you can talk about whatever you're interested in, and the people who are receptive to it will hear it. And it's really a very low-risk thing, even though you're talking about getting up in front of 500 people, potentially, if the room is completely packed.
Yep.
Yeah. Just one last thing. Thank you for the answer. That was a good answer. One last idea that Barry Green had. I don't know if he's still here. Give him credit. But I want to make sure the program committee doesn't lose this idea. The thought was, if there was a mechanism where people could just ask questions about what they'd like to see at NANOG, maybe that's a question they're working on. I don't know how to do X, or I don't know how to do Y. If there's a mechanism for getting that type of thing that may help you guys figure out, okay, what do we need to populate the program with in order to answer these problems, these questions that people keep on bringing up.
Okay. Yep. And actually, let me mention 2 things. One is something that we adopted, I think 3 years ago now. This was the esteemed Mr. Feldman's idea, I believe, was lightning talks. And they've been a roaring success because they play to 2 of our community's strengths. One is our attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, and the other is our need for topical content. So what lightning talks are talks that are being submitted right now by people around you. I mean, there's probably a guy on a laptop right there submitting a lightning talk. And what we do is the program committee votes on them during the conference. They're selected by us during the conference, and they're given the next day. So we'll have 2 or 3 lightning talks tomorrow that were submitted over the course of the last week. And so if there's something you're thinking about right now that's 5 minutes worth of something, 5 to 10 minutes, they're 10-minute slots, it's a hard 10 minutes. You get up, you give 8 slides, you take 2 questions, you're done. And it's a really lightweight, easy way to get some really interesting topical content that was too late or too small for the program. The other thing I'll say is that there's a couple different slots on the survey. People will keep harping at you, survey. There's a survey. I don't know. So one of the things you guys might notice is there's a survey. And so when you go and you're looking and you see the slide, it'll say about the survey, and you'll see that there's a survey that you can take. And so when you go to the survey, it will ask you questions on that survey about the program. And so there's several questions on the survey about the program, and we would like to get a bunch of feedback from you guys about, if you hated it, if you loved it, if you wanted more of something. And I'll tell you personally, I know this, if you're lazy, you're going to click all the multiple choice if you questions, and then you're going to be done. But it's actually, the comments are really useful. And one of the golden things about the comments is when the survey results are posted, you get this long text file of all of the comments posted by everyone, and they're great reading. They're just like there's nuggets of interesting gold in there. So contribute your nugget of gold to the program comments, please. Are there other questions? Comments? Yes?
I have one. Oli Jacobson from Cisco, also organdemo.info. I was just wondering how far the program committees extends into sort of all of the activities of the week. The location of the next meeting is a block and a half from the Walt Disney Concert Hall in LA, which has a fantastic pipe organ. I don't know how much it costs to rent the hall for the night or whatever, but I'd be willing to look into it if people are interested. I think it would be a really spectacular event there.
That's good. Nice. So the first part of the question, there's a fuzzy line there. In general, the program committee has 100% responsibility for the talks selected and a whole lot of input into other stuff, but we don't pick venues, we don't schedule socials, but we try to contribute to those things. So frequently we will contribute. We will go help try to recruit socials. I mean, Ren has been particularly good at that, of chasing, big companies with marketing budgets down and saying, hey, Sunday night, Tuesday night's free, like host an event, go buy these people some booze for God's sakes, or whatever. I don't know if is that what you say? That's what I would say. That's why I'm not good at that. That's why Ren does that. But we will get back
in light of the fact that a large pipe organ is a tremendously complex piece of equipment, and it's very rare to have all the pieces of it actually working. You'll see little out of order tags on various things. I think that Oli's company would be uniquely qualified to
Don't be dissing the Cisco, for God's sakes. All right, other questions? Other questions? No? No kvetches? No tomatoes? All right. You guys are a tame crowd. This is why we have the government we do. Thank you very much.
And as your overlord for the afternoon or evening, I'm going to present the mailing list committee report, which we thought it would be unfair to go and ask the now 3-day appointed mailing list committee to get up and stand up in front of everyone and report about what they've done in the past 4 months or 3 days. And this is my slide. Our report is exactly what we've presented before here. But in addition to that, some of the basic statistics and stuff which were being made available on the website, those are now actually automatically available on the mailman pages. Stuff like the number of subscribers, the number of posts is pretty easy to figure out. I don't know the full level of that stuff because I don't pay that close attention to the actual raw statistics. I know other people are statistics junkies. But if there's any questions for the mailing list committee, I am happy to stand up here for the arrows to be thrown and regarding it. So now is your opportunity to get up to the microphone and yell at me and say you hate us. But if not, then I believe the next thing we have is the merit report, the merit update here from Betty.
Good.
No?
Okay.
All right.
Insert slide. Good evening, everyone. My name is Betty. I missed the San Jose meeting, and I'm really happy to be back here in New York, or back at NANOG here in New York. And my presentation really covers a lot of merit information, but really tries to bring in the organizational flavor of what NANOG is all about. Question earlier about location and involvement for the program committee in selecting sites. The overview of how a site is selected really is determined by who steps forward in the community to host a meeting. And in this case, I was approached, some 18 months ago by Telex. And they approached us at Merit with the idea of hosting a NANOG in New York. We couldn't resist. It was the first time ever for NANOG to be in New York, and we've looked at the site before, but it was always way too expensive and out of our reach. And our colleagues from Telex really came forward, brought me out here to do a pre-site visit, worked with the hotel, and have subsidized a lot of the hotel cost for us to be here in New York. And that's a lot of how we pick sites. everyone in the community who wants to join in hosting the activity, learn from the experience, and certainly get some PR from hosting NANOG, is how we pick a site. The information is then shared in terms of what are our possible sites with the steering committee and the program committee, and we talk about what sites will work well, what sites perhaps won't work well, but the ultimate decision on the partnership of what location we go to really rests with Merit, because Merit takes on the financial liability. And Merit has to sign a memo of understanding with the host to make the meeting happen. So while all of you pay a registration fee, a big piece of the financial risk with the hotel for food and beverage and room rental and AV and all those things that we use to put together this meeting rests with Merit, so we hold on to that responsibility pretty tightly. Although we do share the information, and as you'll see later in my slides, we're sharing the information about what our thinking for the future is. And again, I just really do want to say thank you to Telex. Next slide.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, Jared's working with technology here. And certainly to our contributors, we have a number of folks who contribute services and some capital dollars. Aaron provides some funding to make sure that our network broadcasts take place and that the broadcasts of the meetings are archived. So we count on that sponsorship from Aaron. Internet 2 and the Measurement Factory both donate some hardware and staff time to make various parts of the meeting work. We certainly really count on our break sponsors who help to feed you. And for sure, the beer and gear sponsors. They also provide some sponsorship for some of the break sessions and supplementary breakfast coverage that we might not get, and certainly the big reception on Monday night. It's really important that we have all of these sponsors. They're a big piece of the funding model. I know a few months ago we had to raise the registration fee. As everyone can imagine, hotel costs are going up. And just logistically, it's a balance between what we can count on for sponsorship dollars to underwrite some of the costs and what you as attendees have to pay for. And you'll see how that equation all breaks out in the financial report that I provide at the end. Our social sponsors for this meeting, Equinix has put together a social on Tuesday evening, and then for those of you who are around Wednesday, there's another social provided by Telex that you're welcome to attend, and all the information is on the website. One of the important elements of making the meeting happen, and we talk about this many months in advance, is the Merit staff. While I coordinate a lot of the activities and ultimately am responsible to our Chief Executive Officer and our board back at Merit, these meetings cannot happen without the Merit staff that are here. Many of you know some of the Merit staff personally. If you don't, take time to read some name badges and walk by and say thank you to them, because they put in absolutely a large number of extra hours beyond what their job calls for to make these meetings happen, and that's because they believe in the same philosophy of what NANOG is as you do. And I want to take a moment and acknowledge Carol Wadsworth. Carol's been here doing NANOG for a long time, and she's very key in making you comfortable here at the hotel. She does the event coordination. Gail Turkers takes care of all the registration and program committee support. David Gilbertson, chiefly responsible for making sure that the network interface works with our host and that both the wide area and local networking activities take place. Jason Russell is responsible for making sure that the network broadcast is working and takes a lot of responsibility off my shoulders in making sure that the AV order gets put in place, and that's a lot of little detail follow through. Larry Blunk is our chief engineer back at Merit, and he oversees a lot of the V6 issues that we've been talking about and network stats. Rob Levitt is a new person on the team, and he's backing Jason Russell up. One of the things back at Merit that we began to look at is our sort of key dependencies on staff. We don't want to wear staff out at Merit by doing NANOG after NANOG. So we're introducing some new staff, and it does take a period of training and sort of role mentoring, and Rob is in that role. Then there's, of course, me. I'm sure I do something. And I implemented with our president back at Merit a new program last San Jose meeting. It's about a year ago. At Merit, does everybody know what Merit is? Do I need to go through that? No. No one knows what Merit is. Okay. I guess I should...
Don't you take my tax dollars?
Yeah. I guess I should take a minute then and tell you all what Merit is. Merit Network is an entity. It's a nonprofit organization that's located in Ann Arbor, Michigan. We're actually housed on the University of Michigan campus, but we're owned by the public universities in the state of Michigan. So there are 13 public universities, and they actually own us. But we have a large, what we refer to as membership base, and that's the R&E educational and nonprofit base in Michigan. And we do much of what all of you do, is we provide services, network services to that community. That's what our primary mission is. And as a nonprofit, one of the things that we were fortunate to do many years ago is to participate in the NSFNet program, which was, of course, the base for the internet. As part of our ongoing responsibilities for operating that network, we've been able to maintain our presence with all of you and provide a vendor-neutral partnership so that NANOG really tries and strives for that neutrality through Merit's organization and hosting of the meeting. So that's what we do at Merit. And because there are our members back at Merit that don't have the opportunity to come and learn about NANOG, we wanted to create a tie between the public R&E universities in Michigan and NANOG. And so we implemented an internship program where we sponsor some of the folks from our member campuses to come here with us and participate as Merit staff and meet all of you and get that national exposure that they might otherwise not be afforded. So we have Pete Hofswell, who is from Davenport University. He was with you all in San Jose, and he's with us here again. If you have an opportunity, you might want to introduce yourself to Pete and get his perspective on all of us. He'll tell you all the stories, I'm sure. And of course, we can't make Merit work without Rick Reinecke back at Ann Arbor and Sue Joyner. Sue Joyner has done an absolutely outstanding job in the past few weeks with a lot of the disruption that you've all seen in the mail list committee, as well as the transition of services to the new mail server. Sue has been literally holding guard on the servers and just making everything operate. She's not here, but we owe her a great big thank you. One of the things you'll find on the website as well, but I'd like to sort of recap where we were, is give you some statistics on the demographics and the information for the registration of the meeting before. So again, you can take a look at these stats online. Oh, I see a typo in there, but you'll see, no, I guess I don't. 570 folks, excuse me, were registered for the meeting. You'll see 499 paid. It's an important number for all of you to look at when you look at the registration numbers and the program committee and so forth, because everyone who's on the attendee list does not pay a registration fee. And so I wanted to make sure that in this world of transparency that you understood what the number of registrants, you know, paying versus sponsorship for putting on the program was all about. And then you can see that the membership breaks down accordingly. The budget information from San Jose, yay, the big number that's really important is the last one. We made money on San Jose. That was a really good thing. This is a pretty standard budget report. They follow the same reporting structure. It took us a while as part of the evolution to take a R&E educational budget forum and crunch all of our numbers combined with the University of Michigan out into an audited number that could be presented to all of you, that I could stand here and go through in 2 minutes or less, and hopefully it'll all make sense to you. It's pretty straightforward. We have money in the bank, which is the beginning balance. We had revenue from the meeting that was made up again of the sponsorship dollars and the registration numbers that you've seen in the following slides or the slides for 42. The expense total. And the expense total breaks down below. There are certainly salary dollars, paying for a fraction of the various merit staff. There's non-salary dollars, which are expense not related to salary. Equipment, supplies, the hosting, which is the hotel contract and the AV contract. What else is, the merit staff travel, what it cost to bring all of us here to the meeting. And then general overhead, what it costs merit per FTE, if you will, to pay the rent, keep the lights on, all those things of a general organization. You take all that together, subtract the expense from the revenue, and that's where we made money, which is a good thing. What we have found over the past few years of keeping this data, we don't make the same kind of money on every meeting, and I know that we would love to. Someone asked me the other day, again just this morning, well, why don't you go back to the same locations where you know you made money? Why don't you take NANOG back to the same place where you've already put in wiring infrastructure? And it's one of the things that I would love to hear on the survey, what you think about that, because I have mixed emotions. I don't know, it's nice to be able to take NANOG to different parts of the country. It's nice to build infrastructure where there is none. It's more difficult for us, but I think that there's some value in NANOG being able to do that. There's also some value in not tapping the shoulder of the same host every time to host NANOG. And if you have an opportunity to talk to some of our colleagues from Telex or our previous hosts, or Rodney Jaffe in the back, they can probably share with you some of their own views on the value of hosting NANOG, and I think it would be a shame if we couldn't offer that same benefit to others. But again, on the survey, tell me what you think.
Please.
So what's new? As Jared mentioned, the services that we've been talking about for a long time are now completely out of the NANOG environment and are on 2 donated NANOG machines, what we refer to as Server 1 and Server 2, real unique names. Now that they're out of the merit environment, which means we don't have the dependencies on some of the restrictions or were not imposed here at NANOG by some of the meritisms, I think it's up to the steering committee, the program committee, and the community at large to decide where we go from here. The standard mail lists are out, the website is out, the storage is out. Now what do we do with these machines? What other kinds of services, system services or web-based services, would we want to do with that kind of horsepower? What things would you like to see? What kind of discussion forums might you want to have besides just the NANOG list on these new machines? We now have the infrastructure to be able to start talking about those things. The email lists are converted. It was a little painful for some. It was change. Sorry about that, but the world does move on. I think most of us have all adjusted. Those of you who have changed email addresses, you have to remember to subscribe your new email address. We don't automatically know about that. One of the things, as Jared mentioned again, and we are all aware of, is we need some better spam controls. Larry Blunk is working on some of those things with Sue Joyner back at home at Merritt, and we hope it'll get better. I think that everyone does with spam control. We'll never be perfect, but we want it to get better. We actually applied for, paid for, and received NANOG V6 address space. That was a really big issue for us back at Merritt. And there was some debate even within the planning committees and in the steering committee as to whether we needed our own V6 address space for these meetings. It was a problem if we didn't have our own space. We can decide whether we want to use it or not, meeting to meeting, but if we had a host that didn't have an available V6 address block to loan to us, We had a problem every time we tried to plan these meetings. So it was very fortunate that we were able to work with our colleagues at Aaron, and we can say that we now have our own V4 address space and we have our own V6 address space just for NANOG meetings. One of the things that we have in progress, some of the things that we've been working on, is a new website on the machine. The URL is there. Take a look at it. It's a development website, so don't count on everything working. I've had a couple different people tell me different things about whether it's too glitzy, not helpful enough, looks great. Take a look at it. Joe Provo is working with me and Merritt's webmaster on some of the graphics and the content. We'd like to be able to roll out a new website probably in a couple months, certainly well before we get into posting a new program. I think you'll find, at least I find so far, the control menus and the way to find information on the new website much more helpful. But that's me. So given that you all use it and the website services the community via the survey, tell me what you think. Jared goes to sleep. There we go. So what's next? NANOG 44 in October. We're very excited about going to LA. It was one of, again, how did we pick a host? When Rodney came to me a couple meetings ago, tapped me on the shoulder and said, hey Betty, I'd really like to host this one. You don't say no. There have been many meetings where we didn't have a host. We went to Rodney and we said, Rodney, we really need a host, and he always said yes. So when he asked if we could come to LA, there wasn't even a question about whether we were going. And with our colleagues at Aaron, we put together a great hotel contract, good location. We're very excited. I think Todd has plenty of time with the programs committee to work on a good program. I know that there's the Postel Institute is working on some activities before the meeting. Then, of course, it's joint with Aaron, and we have the Aaron meeting following. I just think that there's going to be a lot of things going on at the meeting and around the meeting. Got to get my glasses here. Sorry. Then we need to talk about NANOG 45, 46, 47, and 48. With my injury, we're a little behind on planning for NANOG 46. I'll take full responsibility for not moving that along as quickly as we would like to. But now that 43 is well underway, 45 has my full attention. We do have a preliminary quote from the Dominican Republic, the Santo Domingo Hotel in the Dominican Republic for that meeting venue. We had a subcommittee, both of the program committee, the steering committee, and some folks from Merit looking at this issue. Should we go? Shouldn't we go? All the issues that we talked about last time and couldn't get to resolution. I think we have a great subcommittee of folks working with us. It looks to me like we're going to have a really good hotel contract, but I leave the word as tentative because we don't have a signed contract. And I really hate to tell everyone to book the dates and plan on going to the Dominican Republic until I do have that hotel contract. But it looks very favorable that that's where we'll be going for NANOG 46. Or 45, excuse me.
The backup location is Yellowknife, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, if going to the if you can't get excited right now about going to the Dominican Republic in February, you don't live far enough north.
Yes, this is true.
I do have some tentative dates in mind for 46, 47, and 48. One of the things that's really important and is becoming increasingly challenging is to not conflict with other meetings. When NANOG is behind in terms of scheduling meetings, it causes the whole world to shudder a little bit because they schedule around us. So I understand that importance, but given some of our sister and brother organizations have already set their meetings in place, it's incumbent upon us to try to work really hard to avoid them. So I have some dates in mind, and I have contacted a few folks who have volunteered to host a NANOG meeting, but the call is out. If there's anyone who hasn't talked with me recently who would like to host a meeting, send me email. Send a message to me directly or to NANOG support. We want to get these, well, certainly 45, but the next 3 as well ironed out so that when we meet again in October, we can be talking about tentative, if not final, locations for those meetings as well.
Betty, is there a reason why it needs to be early June? Could it be mid-June so we miss some of the family-oriented issues around Memorial Day and graduation?
Yeah, sorry, there is. And that's part of the Meritisms. One of the other conflicts that we have to deal with is the Merit staff who host these meetings have a very large schedule, the mid to end of June cycle. So there are problems. We can go late May or early June. Otherwise, we have a lot of conflicts in June for Merit staff.
Is that with the fiscal year closing?
No, it's called our board meeting.
Oh, okay.
Sorry. I mean, that's just one of the constraints that I deal with. I think that's it.
Yeah.
That's it for me. Again, I'm open. I'm here. I'm sort of all around the whole time until Wednesday late. Always send questions to nanog-support@nanog.org. Email me, bburke@merit.edu. We try really hard to be responsive and get an answer out to all of your questions. But again, one of the messages that I want to leave with the community is that we see ourselves as a partner with all of you, and certainly with the steering committee and the program committee, to be flexible, to be transparent. But I know Ren didn't really like my answer too well, but there are some realities that we live with at Merit, and that's just a part of life that we have.
Understood.
Okay. Yep.
Like every year, the individual's family
Yep.
time this week.
Yep. Understand.
You didn't
Hi.
go fast enough.
Hi, Louie.
Hi, Betty. Louis, Equinix. For the Nano 45 dates,
Yes.
are we going back to a Sunday through Tuesday agenda, or
Yes.
is it just for that?
No, you're good.
Okay.
Sunday through Tuesday for that meeting.
All right.
Thanks.
And Betty, thank you for all the work that you put into these meetings, and I saw Carol peeking for one moment as well. She's frantically running off to do something important, I'm sure, like she usually is. She really helps out with these things a lot to make sure this runs really smoothly for everyone. And so thank you again, Betty.
Thank you. You're welcome.
And I believe the last thing we have is the proposed charter things that we've come up with. And I turn it over to Steve.
So I'll make this fast because I know everybody's hungry. Thank you. Okay, so why am I even up here? And for that matter, what's the hell is this NANOG charter thing? So it's our equivalent of corporate bylaws or a constitution. As Betty pointed out, NANOG isn't a separate organization unto itself. We're not a company, we're not incorporated, we're not a nonprofit by ourselves. We are an activity of Merit. Merit bears the ultimate responsibility, especially the financial responsibility and the liability for everything that we do. The charter is an attempt to explain how it works in our new democratic environment. I should point out here, before I go much any further, that Merit didn't have to do this. They could have just kept NANOG all to themselves and continued down that path of just organizing and running everything. They didn't, and that's to their credit, and it's also to our credit that we actually have been able to make it work. So anyway, the charter specifies the organization, the responsibilities, and the authority of all the different pieces that make up NANOG, the committees, Merit, you. We have a process every year where we can fix mistakes in the charter or make additions to it, or just deal with changes in reality, which happen sometimes. There we go. Okay, how we do it, the last physical meeting of every year, we have an election where you make mistakes like electing Jared to the steering committee. But part of also this election is charter amendments. Charter amendments can be added to the ballot either by the steering committee, we decide something's a good idea and add it, or the community, you yourselves can add something by petition process. Says there what the requirements are. It shouldn't be too hard. So if you have something you'd like amended, added to the charter, you can either bring it to the steering committee and we'll talk about it, or you can do it yourselves. Both are perfectly acceptable and valid. So we have a few amendments that have been suggested for this go-around. We discovered during the fun with the mailing list committee over the last few months that there's not a lot of language in there that specifies how the mailing list committee is organized and run and things like that. So we want to normalize that. There's a lot of specification about the program committee, and we just want to bring those in line. In particular, it doesn't say anything one way or the other about how to remove people from the MLC. So we need to try to fix that. The steering committee, we also have noticed that there's no way to get rid of us other than electing us out at the end of our two-year terms. But maybe I'll do something really awful between now and October, and you'll want to get rid of me sooner. So there's no way to do that right now, but we should add perhaps a recall provision to the charter. And then, of course, there's the really boring stuff like just changing language and spelling errors in there so that we don't look like idiots. These are more suggestions. These are not fully baked ideas. Some of them just came out of me thinking about it, writing these slides. Some of them have been things that have been suggested to me other places. The program committee chair, it was noticed that by the time somebody gets to be PC chair and gets up to speed and gets really good at it, it's time for them to leave. So maybe we should add or relax the term limits for the PC chair. Actually, this is Todd, wants to be dictator for life, but you know.
No, he wants the next one.
Oh, okay.
Yes. It's sadism, not masochism.
Yeah. Yes, I'll point out that is not a job somebody would really want to do for a long period of time. Let's see, what else is there? Committee chair selection process. Right now, the charter is pretty silent on how committee chairs get selected. What we've done is allow the committees to self-organize. Is this the right thing, or does the SC want some say into how the chairs are set, or do we want them to be set by election, or just all sorts of things to talk about. Specification of the steering committee's oversight role. The charter is interesting. It says a lot about a certain set of things that the SC does, and it says nothing about other things that the SC does. So maybe we want to tighten up some language or add some things that specify what the SC is really responsible for and not responsible for. Some more ideas. Since I wrote down these slides, came out of this meeting, the size of the program committee. Is 16 right? Is it not right? Should we think about adjusting it? If so, the charter amendment process is the way to do that. The charter says 16. The role of the mailing list committee. Again, it's one of those things where it says a lot about a certain set of things and nothing about others that the mailing list committee could do. For example, people have talked in the past about alternate forms of communications like blogs and, I don't know, wikis and other fun things. Do we want the MLC involved in things like that? And if so, do we want that in the charter? Surveys. Should it be mandatory for all NANOG attendees to fill out surveys? And I think that's it for my crazy ideas. So how you guys can help. If you have an idea, you want to talk about one of these or a new idea, float it on NANOG Futures, or talk to one of us, or all of the above. We could really use a volunteer from the community to be coordinator for ideas as we're putting together the ballot for October. I'm handling it from the SC side, but it would be really good to have somebody who's not affiliated with the current committee to help with this. in the past. I see one of our volunteers just walked in, but we don't necessarily need to have, or want to inflict the pain on the same person each time. What the volunteer would do is coordinate with the SC, me in particular, collecting and tracking proposals, posting stuff on a website somewhere, and leading or helping to lead discussions on NANOG features. And yeah, open discussion. I guess this is the end of the formal agenda, so anything else anybody wants to talk about on charter or anything else we've talked about today, now's your chance.
All right.
I'm really
So-
surprised to see Bill Norton at the mic and Joel Yeagley heading up to say something behind him. I don't know about you guys. But
So I'm
that's
gonna stand up
shocking.
here and field the tomatoes and
Okay.
everything else. Bill,
Well,
how are you?
First off, Todd, it's interesting you pointed out several times now that it's been the Bill and Joel show. I think the question to you is, do you want to encourage discussion or stifle discussion?
We would really like to hear from you. That's the reason why we're asking about the survey, and that's the why this is the community meeting. If I haven't made you feel open and welcome enough, please get up at the mic and socialize some more. We really truly do care about what you think.
Great.
Please tell us what you think.
I guess
You
my-
may not convince us of your opinion, but I would love to hear your opinion. And we're here all week just for you.
I guess it was more of a philosophical question, and I really kind of put this to Betty, because it's been enough time now since the evolution, and we've had several iterations through the committees and several meetings since then. How has this evolution worked for you? Is this something that you would say was a really good decision and everything's much better than it was before? Or would you say that there are some pros and cons, it's kind of a mixed bag? I'd like to hear your perspective on that.
Sure. With every family, which I think the NANOG community is, there's always issues. I think that some of the nonprofit nature of Merit hosting the activity and the very commercial nature of NANOG, they're just issues that sometimes we have to work through. I will have to say, though, that there is a commitment on both sides to find answers to the solutions. The work with the steering committee, the program committee, and the charter, giving us a guiding post has been really, really, really helpful. I think that the new evolution of the mail list committee and new forms of communication will help Merit help the community with dialogue. I think that still tends to be one of the sticky areas that we have problems with. But I really will have to say, Bill, I think that things are better. It takes more work. There's no question. As Steve was saying, Merit didn't have to do this. Merit didn't have to go forward and embrace the community through the new charter. The reality that I knew with Mike McPherson, who was our CEO at the time, is we didn't have any choice either. We were so badly broken, both in terms of our relationship with the community at Merit and the community itself, we had to find new ways to get along and to make it work. And I think just the fact that we are always striving for transparency, the steering committee reminds me, I remind them to talk to the community. And I think there is a commitment not to stifle communication, but to really deal with the issues. And we don't run from them. We don't always agree on how to solve them, but we don't run from them, and we really do listen.
I would just like to thank you for that. And I think it was the right decision also. One thing that I think we're missing, though, from the transparency side is the absence of the open disclosure of problems. When things aren't working right, there are as a family, you don't want to air your dirty laundry. I understand that motivation. But at the same time, as a community member on the outside, sometimes it's really interesting and insightful to hear about those problems and those conflicts, how they were resolved, and maybe then we'd have better insight as to how to resolve those problems in the form of charter amendments. That's just my thought.
Thank you, Bill.
I just wanted to add to Betty's comment that Merit has been really supportive of this process. Betty herself, Mike McPherson, as she mentioned, and also Don Welch, the current CEO, are all really engaged in this, always working with the SC to help deal with issues. You can tell Don is engaged because he's been to almost every NANOG meeting since he became CEO. and has been working with us on a lot of things. I will mention also your comment about being transparent and open about our issues. Yeah, I can see why that could be a good thing to a point. Sometimes you don't want to air your dirty laundry, and I always err on that side. Some of that stuff is exposed in the steering committee meeting minutes, which maybe 3 people read. Yeah, there's usually stuff hidden buried in there, perhaps. But yeah, I can see that point, and also NANOG Futures is a good place for this kind of discussion as well.
One quick comment I have on that. So let's all be honest. The content of this meeting is kind of boring, right? I mean, like, this is the administrivia of how NANOG works, and that's not all that exciting, and yet there's 125 people in this room, right? So to me, that means that we have gotten to a point where a significant percentage of the people who attend this conference care about how it's put together, and they care about who administers the mailing list, and how they got to be there, and they care about the decisions about where we're going to go for the next conference. And to me, that this is a very successful set of events, because it used to be the case that those decisions were just made, and they were made and it worked, but now we have evolved over a fairly short period of time where a very large percentage of this community feels a substantial ownership in what happens, to the point where now we get to discuss how much of our dirty laundry do we all want to air in public, which is great, I think. So I think that's an interesting question about how much to expose in public and on what kind and under what circumstances. But I would like to note, just for us to all sort of, spraying our shoulders, patting ourselves on the back, that we've gotten to a point where we're all actively participating in this process, and it's a huge number of people, and it's a much larger percentage of people more actively engaged in this community than certainly was true 4 or 5 years ago. So I think that's good.
Joel Yegley. My favorite color is still blue.
You didn't answer the question about the Care Bear.
Yeah, what's your favorite Care Bear? What is up with
I believe it's Stormy.
Excellent.
But I also liked Murky, who was in the Care Bears, but not a Care Bear himself. Notwithstanding that, yeah. So, I mean, the thing I would observe is that the thing that got us to the community state was, oversight of the moderation of the mailing list. And it seems to be the case that a substantial amount of our policy overhead is still driven by response to how the mailing list committee is constituted, what sort of job it does, and whether or not it has rules. And I think the goal from the outset in producing a mailing list committee was to eliminate arbitrary decisions. And to the extent that consensus and a pool of people who are responsible for making those decisions, and a moderate amount of oversight of the pool of people who make those decisions, was the piece that we needed. We have that. And we may have more noise on the mailing list than certain individuals would prefer, but at the same time, I think that actually worked out. And we seem to have foundered on the idea that that the mailing list committee needs a lot of rules, or that it needs to have a codified system in place in order to, not make arbitrary decisions. And I think that's a mistake. Plenty of legal systems actually work without having a body of laws. The entire English legal system is based on the notion that judges, with a history in the form of stare decisis, can actually make reasonable decisions. And oversight is provided by another layer, right? And so we have the steering committee now, we have a mailing list committee, and I don't think fundamentally that the mailing list committee needs a lot of guidance unless it becomes arbitrary.
So Joel, in response to that, one of my personal concerns with what you're saying, well, I have a number of my own opinions on the mailing list, which I'm happy to share with you in private, is that some of these things, like the acceptable, the acceptable use policy, is codified in the actual charter. and is not something that we are in a position that we can immediately change. And that's something which, you know, at least from my own personal perspective, I look at, that's there until it gets amended. If we want to go and remove some of that stuff or change the way those functions are in the charter, I certainly encourage you to make a suggestion and recommendation about what we should change in this. And I'm actually really excited to hear people starting to talk about this, because in the year that I was not on the steering committee, in some ways, you know, it's reflecting upon that, it does sort of feel like Back to the Future with some of these discussions about the mailing list. And I really would like to see where we're going come out in a way that everyone is reasonably happy, except for the few fringe people who you can never make happy.
Well, I mean, you know, if you get yourself banned from the list under these circumstances, and you know your only avenue of appeal to the SC is to the SC, and you don't come away satisfied, well, too bad,
Yeah.
right? But you know, I think that is a, you know, obviously precedent says that that's a rather rare event.
Yeah, I would agree.
So we don't need to produce a lot of policy in order to account for that rare event, you know, is my sense.
I agree with you, Joel, and I think when I mentioned to Bill's question about relationship between Merit and the community, most of my frustration, and to some degree Don Walsh's frustration, was simply in getting the existing, or what was the existing mail list committee, to document their process for making some of their decisions. And so, in this world of trying to create transparency, just tell us how you work. Keep it simple. And I would hate to be on a committee, I personally would hate to be on a committee that was just viewed as censoring communication amongst this community. And I don't think that that's what any members of the SC want either in the mail list committee, but it was just a real struggle in trying to get some documentation on how they were working, or how the decisions were implemented and what the process was. And I think we've made great strides. That's there. And now it's going forward in terms of what do you all want to see happen with, you know, the mail list, the communication forums for the community.
Right. Well, I think RS can probably respond to that more cogently, since he actually was on the MLC. But I'm done now.
Hi, Kobe Sue, University of Maryland, and also on the program committee. I wanted to respond to something that you said in terms of the gist.
Bill, you?
Yeah, the bill. In terms of the gist of the Bill and Joel show. One of our concerns is that we are hearing the same voices over and over again, and it's a natural outcome of certain people are more vocal than others. But we really want to hear everyone, you know. So we don't. I think we're concerned that when, you know, you have the same 3 or 5 people coming up and talking, we really want to hear what you have to say, but we also really want to hear what other people have to say, and I don't know how we can address if that's intimidating to, say, our new members. You know, if you know, someone will sit there and wonder, well, I haven't been here for a while, so maybe I shouldn't come up and ask a question, and I wanted to answer that and say, please come up and ask questions, because we want to hear you. You want to hear your ideas, we want to hear your questions, we want to hear your proposals for talks, and you're what makes this work. So there you go.
I echo that. If anyone looks at the trends of the registration attendance background, over the past 4 meetings, 1/3 of the folks registering for NANOG are newcomers, their first meeting. And you know, we don't know what they think about it. Do they come back? Were they disappointed after their first visit?
Yeah, I would actually also.
So to follow up, one way that they can let us know is there's this thing called a survey. Nice. I'm not sure if anyone's mentioned it yet, but it does exist, and we're really interested in it. If you could fill out the survey. Thanks.
So just a quick follow up on you just the.
I was going to say this is probably one of the calmest community meetings ever.
It is.
The strong personalities are not here.
So. Behave.
So if you can't get up and comment now and make me even later and hungrier, then I don't know what.
No, just a quick comment on what Kobe just said. I mean, so the one thing I have to say to longtime NANOG attendees is, Randy Bush, IIJ, right? So on the one hand, I mean, right, but let's talk about that.
Thunder, Todd. I was about to say we
gonna say
tried
that?
that 15 months ago and it didn't work then.
But let's talk about that. So on the one hand, people are like, after every presentation, Randy gets up and says Randy Bush IIJ and then says we tried that 20 years ago and it didn't work, right? But on the other hand, you know what? When he doesn't do that, sometimes there's no questions. And when he does that, there's almost always another question from someone else. So there's a balance, you know. I mean, if you are a longtime NANOG attendee and nobody's getting up to ask a question, you've asked a bunch of them already, give people some space. If they don't get up, get the conversation started too. So it's a balance. It's difficult we're an introverted crowd on the whole, and it's difficult for people to get up and ask questions unless they're Randy Bush from IIJ or me. But these are good conversations to have.
Hi, Rob Seastrom, and for the past year I've worked for NeutralNet, but that doesn't matter to this conversation. I got up here because I wanted to echo what Joel was saying. The flashpoint for the whole uprising and call for reform and how NANOG was running was what I would call capricious decisions being made about throwing people off the list. Someone got his posting privileges yanked for a period of time for tongue-in-cheek invocation of Godwin's law. And, you know, I always felt during the 2 years and 3 months, which was 3 months more than I really had signed up for, that I was on the MLC, that really we were sort of there to exercise good judgment. And when asked for our procedure, I pretty much said that on a couple of occasions, and that, you know, there's a certain degree to which you cannot codify that which is exceptional. And by its very definition, any kind of regulatory action that the MLC might take to try to get people who are acting kind of outside of our societal norms here in our little community, that's so unusual as to not really be able to codify it. And I was told when I tried to say words to the effect of, well, we kind of rule by consensus on stuff that's serious, like tossing somebody off the list for a period of time, and when it's something that's, you know, substantially less major, we go, you know, on our own and say, you know, hey, we would really appreciate it if you would honor our AUP by X, Y, and Z. And I was told that that wasn't acceptable enough, that wasn't detailed enough. And I always sort of felt between a rock and a hard place, particularly when I was chair of the MLC, that, you know, okay, well, the steering committee wants more, but I can't really give them more. So now that I'm out of the line of fire and it doesn't really affect me one way or the other, I'm not on the SC nor on the MLC, I would like to suggest that the SC exercise a lot of care and consideration, which I think they have, in who they put on the MLC. And at that point, leave the MLC alone to exercise good judgment. The procedure as a replacement for good judgment, you know, you read stories in the paper about that all the time, about, you know, schools having zero tolerance policies for this, that, and the other thing. And I don't think it serves any particular purpose to push for more and more detail, more and more codification of, well, you know, what does the MLC do? The answer is very simply, in an ideal world, the MLC deals with like mail bouncing and mailer loops, and, you know, almost never deals with people acting like idiots. And that's almost the case already. So I pass the mic to my esteemed colleague who, unlike me, actually came around for a second helping. Thank you.
Thank you.
David Barak, AT&T, and human pincushion. So I am on the MLC, so feel free to direct complaints to me. Basically, I would just want to echo what's been said, that it's not possible to enumerate badness. So So because we cannot enumerate badness, we can only say that those things which are permitted, and those things which are kind of like those things which are permitted. And if it looks wrong, we know it when we see it, and we'll try to be polite and gentle and ask people to refrain from doing things that look unpleasant or look untoward. So we'll do what we can, but there's a limit to how much we can tell you how we'll do that in advance. Other than I do hope that the SC is willing to, if necessary, have a process for resolving a dispute in the MLC and giving us guidance if it comes to that. Because there have been cases where we weren't sure how to handle a specific situation, and there were strong opinions about handling it different ways.
I would really like a chance to sit down with you and your new colleague while we're here this week and talk about some of this. The past is the past. We need to get past. We need to get beyond it and and figure out where to go going forward. I believe a lot of the issue that we've had the last period of time is because there were some major differences of opinions on how to do things, as you mentioned, on the MLC. And that's a case where you really do need a procedure to deal with that. I think some of what we've been doing is dancing around that. Some of it is an attempt to deal with it poorly. We need better approach. I agree with RS that the best job for MLC would be to not have to do anything because everything's running fine. There's always going to be people causing trouble on the list, unfortunately. Yeah, if it weren't for people, yeah. So we need a reasonable and predictable way of dealing with this, and that's really what it comes down to. The rest of it is perhaps minutia, and it maybe doesn't need to be written, codified as policy. Doesn't need to be in the charter, whatever. But let's figure out how best to make it work going forward.
Steve is the ex officio member of the SC and the Middle List Committee because it's acknowledging, David, just what you said, that we need a better method of communication and exchange between the SC and the MLC. And Steve is that link.
Great.
I'll also point out that with the MLC being reconstituted, there is a large opportunity here to decide what you want to be going forward and make that happen.
Yep, so everyone in favor of just letting the list be wild, say aye. All opposed? Excellent.
That's actually an important comment, though. I hate to harp on this, but there are differences of opinion out there among the community of what the mailing list should be, what the MLC's role should be in it. Does there need to be, I don't want to use the word censorship, but that's really what it is. Does it need to be there at all? If so, how is it exercised? One of the ongoing debates that I keep having to get in the middle of is, should an MLC member be allowed to tap somebody on the shoulder? Todd, you know that was really inappropriate. Please don't do that anymore.
It is always me, by the way.
I've gotten that message.
Joel, you already.
Joel Yegley.
You already said you were done.
Yeah.
No,
well, but I'm responding to I'm responding to a question. Clearly.
No.
No, I mean, I've received that message before, and I have moderated my behavior sometimes. So, I mean, the observation, I think, is that actually serves a valuable role because, you remind people where it is that they're having a discussion and that perhaps they shouldn't be arguing in public or that the list is not the most appropriate place to do that.
Yeah, Joel, that's fine. The problem was that there were repeated instances of somebody getting a warning from an MLC member saying, hey, that message is totally out of line, and the person saying, dude, I thought that message was fine, and sending it back to the admins list and getting 3 messages back saying, yeah, you're fine, ignore that. And then, so forget who's right. It doesn't matter who's right. The mailing list committee look like idiots because they got one guy out there who's saying, don't do that, and 3 people saying, oh, ignore that.
Right.
And then you're like, as Joe Blow, you're like,
yeah.
If the MLC can't achieve consensus among itself, then it's clearly non-functional. right?
Well, yes.
And you know, that's where some oversight on the part of the SC is obviously desirable. In terms of the content of the mailing list, I mean, I think the message that Jayhawk wrote, 11 years ago now, is actually quite accurate. I mean, there is a diversity of discussion that will go on the mailing list, and not all of it is narrowly confined to things that we think of as purely operational. And I don't really see a solution to that unless, you know, you really want list Nazis. And we decided a number of years ago now that we were not willing to live with list Nazis. So we don't have them.
Yeah, I personally have my own opinions about what is appropriate on the list and what is not, and I really would like to see more people participating, for example, on the NANOG futures. Or if you decided you wanted to put it on the survey, you could put it on the survey as well. Excellent. Yes?
Rob Seastrom again. The reply that you get to asking people to moderate their behavior on the list will very much be in tone with the way that you ask them. And I was not privy to any of the recent spate of stuff that went down. I was always very careful when I was sending out requests to people to CC NANOG admins so that all of the rest of my team knew what was going on. And my requests were almost always framed in the, hi, I noticed you did this. We'd really appreciate it if you would honor our AUP by doing this and this other thing instead. And if you tell somebody, this is off topic, this is out of line, or whatever, without saying, hey, wouldn't you do Z instead of X? The tone on it's entirely different. And yes, we did have a few people, I'm sure David remembers some of them, who came back with the equivalent of sending ASCII art of a middle finger and telling the MLC just where they could stick it. And they ended up off the list anyway because they wouldn't listen to us. But in the vast majority of cases, if you approach people nicely and say, hey, no hard feelings personally or anything, but would you mind doing Z instead of X? It generally works. And if I'm not advocating sensitivity training for the MLC. I personally would be the last person to advocate that, you understand. But on the other hand, it really does have a lot to do with how you approach the problem. And I think that a lot of the future issues can be fended off by, and if you would like the MLC to be nice about it when they approach you about a post that may or may not be off topic, you can certainly put it on the survey.
Excellent. Back to the survey. So thank you. Anyone else? 3, 2, 1.
So if any newcomers have actually made it through this meeting, I just wanted to reiterate, we have a newcomers meeting tomorrow morning. There will also be old timers and people on the SC and the PC and probably the mailing list committee, who knows.
And it's a breakfast, not
it's
just
a breakfast.
meeting.
You get free food. So yeah, please come and talk to people.
Good.
Free food, so it's
quick comment
so it's a place where you can hide the beer and other things on your expense report.
That's right, exactly.
No receipt.
And quick comment to the program committee, I'll be turning on voting for Lightning Talks peripheral to dinner. It's unclear to me when I'll do that, but I'll send out mail, and then you should vote on stuff. Thanks.
Yep. And just in case it's unclear, please come up, approach us, talk to us, especially if you hate everything we're doing. We'd love to hear from you. Thank you.